We are recording now. Yeah. Hi, everybody. This is another podcast from Immortal Tortoise where we talk all things mental health. My guest today is a very special person who prefers to remain anonymous because of the stigma associated with mental health. But he too is a bipolar survivor. And the interesting thing about his journey is that he has self diagnosed himself and also found ways of treating himself without medication. Right? So we will unpack these experiences of his and understand how he has gone about his journey. So over to you, sir. Could you explain to us a bit as to when you first felt something was amiss and there were some mood swings taking place?
Sure. So, this journey takes us back to my MSc days.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have been a kind of person who's been who takes great pride in his detective skills, in the skills that I possess.
Mm-hmm.
So, so, uh, and the reason I mentioned this as during my MSc days is because what typically happened was, so
Mm-hmm.
before this, whenever I used to study or whenever I used to actually make a prediction about something, it always used to come true. But during my MSc, what happened was I had actually gone for my examination and
Mm-hmm.
I told myself that this is the kind of score that I will get or this is the kind of marks that I will get. But I
Mm-hmm.
got very, very less compared to what I had predicted. So
Mm-hmm.
I was, and unfortunately the papers are not being made available to you, right? The final examination papers are not being made available to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't take it before. So I was never a good student, but my concepts were always clear. So I
Mm-hmm.
always used to take great pride in my concepts,
Mm-hmm.
clarity, the appreciation of the subject, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
always used to go to the depth to understand something.
Mm-hmm.
But when I actually lost marks in my MSc, while I
Mm-hmm.
was not a big fan of scoring marks, but that
Mm-hmm.
actually jolted me a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I actually started sulking. So I probably got into a mode where I was not able to reconcile to the fact that I could go wrong, right?
Mm.
And
So would it be fair to say that the MSc results were like a shock to your system?
that's correct. It was a big shock. It was a big
Mm,
jolt to me, right?
mm,
And I couldn't take it. So
mm,
once I couldn't take it, so I started losing interest in pretty much everything that I was doing, and it
mm,
spiraled into something really big.
mm,
So from a person whose company was being loved by everyone, people used to
mm,
consult me for different things. I
mm,
actually started getting into my shell. So
mm,
I started developing those mood swings. So I got into a mode where I was absolutely ecstatic. And
mm,
then I also got into a mood where I was absolutely depressive. I started losing my sleep.
mm.
Then I
So
started eating.
when you were in these moods, what were your habits like? What would you do?
So, initially when it started out, I believed that I wasn't interested in anything. I had lost the zest for life. I was
Mm,
just whiling away my time. I was actually praying that I actually just while away my time. So I wanted to waste my life. That's because I felt the life wasn't worth it. But
mm,
later on, when I came to terms with it, when I started reading about all these symptoms and all, when I realized that this is BPMD, right, bipolar mood
mm,
disorder, then I
mm,
realized that okay, there's more to it,
mm,
and probably something happened in my life. I'm not able to pinpoint on the exact reason. When I
mm,
started realizing that I could utilize it
mm,
to to make it beneficial for myself as well. So, like for
mm,
example, during the ecstatic times, I
mhm,
used to be absolutely happy, right?
mm,
I pursue quite a bit of sports as well. I was
mm,
excelling in those things. And when
mm,
I became depressive, which is
mm,
on the other side of the spectrum, I
mm,
started discovering theories in
mm,
physics, mathematics, psychology. One
mm,
which I have never studied, right? One which I
mm,
was never used to. And
mm,
I started writing those theories.
mm,
And after a point of time I got to know that some of these theories are absolutely right. So
mm,
they have actually become, so those were hypotheses at that point of time. Later
mm.
on they got converted into theories as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting.
And then I
Excuse
started writing as well. So
me. Mm,
I started writing. I became a maniac. I started writing heavily. I became a prolific reader.
mm,
And then I also started sketching, and also basically my creative skills were something that I never had realized before this, but they actually went to the next level.
Right. Hmm. So during the entire experience, did you ever consult going through therapy or going to a psychiatrist?
So it was not because there's stigma attached to it, but
Right.
because I had never had faith on doctors.
Hmm.
So, and moreover, as I told you earlier, I had immense faith in my capabilities. So even without going to the doctor, I felt that I could treat myself. Right?
Hmm.
Initially, I thought that I could treat myself or I would want to get treated. But later on, I started loving it. I started loving the pain that was associated with it.
Hmm.
So, which is why I thought that I shouldn't be going to the doctor.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Because see, the thing is that I spoke with a bipolar 2 survivor a few days back, and he
Mm-hmm,
mentioned the same thing about moods, the oscillating between highs and lows, right? And he's also off medication. He was on lithium, but now he's off medication. Okay,
mm-hmm,
but he is not able to manage the lows or the highs because when he's low, he can't bring himself to do anything, and when he's high, he's not able to capitalize on it. So, what
mm-hmm.
would you suggest for such people?
So, everyone's situation is different.
Hmm.
So to me, when it started out, right, so the mental agony was so much that I started causing or inflicting physical pain on myself. So I used to
Hmm.
insert needles on my fingers and all. That's because I thought
Hmm.
the physical pain will ease off my mental pain.
Hmm.
But having crossed that stage, now having fully realized that there's a positive angle to it as well, right?
Hmm.
I have started actually living with it. I have come to terms with it. In fact, I love it when I'm absolutely sad. That's because I believe that the most profound of all emotions is sadness. And
Hmm.
it's during sadness that I'm able to discover so many new things.
So tell us a
So
little bit about the discovery which you found very relevant for your case or helped you get over the depression slash sadness or sorrow.
I'm sorry, could you go again, please?
I was saying that could you tell us a bit about some of the theories or ideas you discovered which you found to be very relevant for you and helped you get over the depression or sorrow which you were experiencing?
So, you actually never overcome that feeling. Depression is
Hmm.
something that always resides in you. You never
Hmm.
get cured, right?
Hmm.
So, some of these theories were involving physics, mathematics, and also I could see numbers in front of me, just like the way you have read about Ramnujam seeing
Correct.
theorems in his dreams, right? I
Correct.
could see
Correct.
those numbers in front of me. I could see those theorems or see those theories coming to life. And then I
Hmm.
also started actually creating new solutions. Like, for example, in an operation research problem, there's a certain way you solve
Hmm.
Hungarian problem, right? Hungarian
Hmm.
assignment issue and all. I could actually come up with absolutely ridiculous ways of solving those without
Hmm.
actually without actually treading on the traditional route or the usual way
Hmm.
of getting the solutions.
Hmm. Then how has this condition affected affected the company you keep or the relationships you had? Are you married? Do you have children? How has it panned out in that sense?
So, most of the people don't know that I have depression. So even when I talk about it, right, I talk
Hmm.
about it as a matter of fact. But
Hmm.
people aren't willing to accept it. People don't seem to understand it to the
Hmm.
extent that I do, right? They
Hmm.
probably take it very light and
Hmm.
they feel that that's my very nature. That's my
Hmm.
actual nature, which is why I am behaving like this. But they don't understand that I am also fighting my own battle, right?
Hmm.
So that's one thing worth noting. The other thing is because of this, I have actually started loving solitude. So I don't like
Hmm.
people's company anymore. So I'm
Hmm.
happy being myself. Whenever I am actually in a depressive stage, I start writing vigorously. I become a
Hmm.
prolific writer, right?
Hmm.
I start reading. And
Hmm.
then when the other thing that I typically do is I close myself and
Hmm.
start watching those tear jerkers or those horror movies because I
Hmm.
feel that they are going to enhance my capability to do something better.
Interesting.
So that's the
Hmm.
way I actually I keep drawing negative energy towards me. That's because I don't want to consider negative energy negative. I'm trying
Hmm.
to take positive out of it. I try to
Hmm.
convert it into something positive. Like, for example, some of the best things that I have done is when
Hmm.
I'm absolutely depressed. So that's the way I
Hmm.
see it.
So would you say you lean more towards the depression side and compared to the mania, or are they equal?
So, I don't understand the difference between these two. So for
Hmm.
me, I'm not the doctor. I have diagnosed it myself, right?
Hmm.
So by
Hmm.
mania, if you mean that's the extreme or the extreme spectrum of depression,
Hmm.
right? Then I would say that it gets to that stage, but it peaks for a very low time. I'm
Hmm.
usually depressed. I don't get to the mania stage. Mania
Hmm.
stage, it usually happens on the other stage, other side of the spectrum, which is
Hmm.
ecstasy. So
Hmm.
during that time, my sporting skills go to the next level. Right? I
Hmm.
usually so like for example, if I'm playing cricket, right, I'm
Hmm.
able to bowl a lot quicker. I'm
Hmm.
able to hit the ball of the middle of the bat. I'm able
Hmm.
to catch those balls which one can only dream of, for example.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So I would probably say I would go on a limb and say so that you are probably bipolar 2, which is which leans towards depression, and you have sometimes have manic episodes. For instance,
Mm-hmm.
I have bipolar 1,
Mm-hmm.
where mania is the principal component and depression is not seen so often. But the
Okay.
strange thing about my condition is that I've never really experienced depression apart from the period when I was over medicated by the doctors because they were afraid of a manic attack happening again.
Okay.
So that's my experience of bipolar 1 at least.
Okay.
But the bipolar 2 person I spoke with was very clear. He said that he definitely experiences mania and depression. And
Mm-hmm.
even though he's off the pills now, he finds it difficult to motivate himself to harness those energies. For instance, you have come up with your own ways of
Mm-hmm.
harnessing negative or depressive energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. That's interesting.
Okay.
Because also the thing is that psychiatrists told me that 2% of the world, across culture, across religions, across people, across gender, across caste, across creed, is
Mm-hmm.
diagnosed bipolar, right?
Okay.
So that's just the percentage of people who are diagnosed bipolar. Right?
Correct.
I'm just wondering how many people like you are out there who go through these mood swings but lack the intellectual capacity to actually make sense of it.
So unfortunately, we aren't able to put a number against it, but
Right,
that's a very good point that you made. So there
right.
could be many people who must be like this. In fact,
Yes.
uh, Harsh, I strongly believe that until and unless you are absolutely depressed,
Hmm.
right? So I'm using the word depressed. It could be changed with mania as well, depending on how you see it, right?
Hmm.
Until and unless you are absolutely depressed, you
Hmm.
can't make discoveries. So
Hmm.
so there's a popular saying.
Hmm.
So I will narrate the story and then I will come to the point that I'm trying to make. So once a disciple of Ramakrishna Paramahansa actually came to him and
Hmm.
said that you have seen God, right? I would
Hmm.
want to see God as well. He
Hmm.
said, okay, come to me when I am taking bath in the morning and I will show you God.
Right,
And that disciple actually accompanies Ramakrishna Paramahansa to the river. And
right.
you know what Ramakrishna Paramahansa does is he actually takes his head and puts it underwater
Hmm.
for a few seconds and takes it out.
Hmm.
And then he does it again. And
Hmm.
after a few times, he actually extends the duration for which he's put the head below the water,
Hmm.
okay, under the water.
Hmm.
And after that, the disciple actually moves back and says that, what are you trying to do to me, Guruji? Right?
Hmm.
He says,
Hmm.
until and unless, just like the way you were actually fighting for that breath, right? Single
Hmm.
breath.
Hmm.
Until and unless you are actually
Hmm.
absolutely devoted to see
Hmm.
God, you will not be able to see Him,
Hmm.
right? So that's
Hmm.
the kind of stuff. And now, drawing that analogy, until
Hmm.
and unless you are absolutely depressed, right, you'll
Hmm.
never be able to make discoveries. So the world's
Hmm.
greatest scientists or the
Hmm.
greatest writers in
Hmm.
my in so according to me, this is my strong belief, right? I don't
Hmm.
have any empirical evidence. Just because
Hmm.
I have got limited knowledge, right? Depending based on my knowledge, I feel
Hmm.
until and unless these people are depressed, these people will not be able to make the inventions, or these
Hmm.
people will never be able to come up with the writings that they have come up with. So you try reading Dostoevsky. I
Hmm.
can challenge anyone. Until
Hmm.
and unless person is depressed, he can't read Dostoevsky or he can't appreciate Dostoevsky like the way
Hmm.
Dostoevsky wrote it.
Hmm.
Right? So I discovered Dostoevsky, I discovered Guy de Maupassant, I started discovering World War II, right? I started
Mm,
getting into the psychoanalysis of those
mm,
people who were actually waging wars and all. When
mm,
I was actually, and when I was absolutely depressed, and I could see many more things than what people are usually able to see. Like for example, when you look at World War II, right? When
mm,
you so you usually call Hitler a tyrant, but how
mm,
many people actually know that Stalin had killed more people than Hitler?
mm,
Genghis Khan killed more people than Hitler, right?
mm.
But at the same time, you don't take his name or you consider Hitler as the biggest tyrant in the history of
Correct.
mankind, right? The other
Correct.
thing that you typically do is you don't appreciate the artistic skills that he had. So you know when you
Mm,
start looking at the history, when you start reading about Hitler, when you
mm.
start connecting the dots in his life, you are able to make out why he became the Hitler or the person he is.
Hitler was also a vegetarian and he also despised horror movies because he was so sensitive to them.
Sorry, come again. I couldn't hear that.
Hitler was also a vegetarian and he
Absolutely.
despised horror movies because of he was very sensitive to stimulus around him.
I'm not able to hear you too well, Harsh,
I'm
unfortunately.
saying
There
what
seems
I
to
was
be.
saying was that Hitler was also a vegetarian
That's correct.
and he was very sensitive to stimulus, so he hated horror movies.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's a good thing to know. Thanks.
Mm,
Thanks for sharing it.
mm,
So one thing for sure, so you start understanding more than what you're able to see. If you
mm,
just look at history the way people typically look at things, you would
mm,
call Hitler a tyrant and move on. But how many people actually know that he was very close to his mom? He was a
mm,
brilliant artist, right? He had a photographic memory. So
mm,
just one look at the building and he could draw it without even looking at it again,
mm.
right?
That's
So,
correct.
and then you start getting to understand it so much more. So it's not about getting into depth and all. You are also able to get into the psyche, the mind of those people, right? You are able to appreciate so many more things. So that's what I mean. I
Yeah,
hope I was able to make myself clear.
definitely, definitely. Yeah. So tell me something that in your personal life,
Mhm.
amongst your friends, your family, do they know you have this condition? How has that been experienced then?
So my wife knows it for sure. I'm a
Okay.
very transparent person. I'm a very frank person. So whenever I'm feeling down, I usually talk about it. But it's just
Okay.
that people aren't mature enough to understand that there's something called depression, or they don't
Mm,
even understand that it could lead to mood swings. So
mm,
people call me temperamental. That's because, like for example, when I'm playing a game of table tennis, right? I may be leading 10-0, and there
mm,
must be only 1 point to win the game.
mm,
I will
mm,
actually lose the game from there. That's because I don't feel like winning. I will
mm.
actually start hitting the balls out and all.
Right.
So they feel that I am temperamental, but it's not my temperamental nature, It's got
Mm,
to do with the manic episode
mm.
with peaks at times.
So did you confide in your wife before marrying, or how did that work out?
So I didn't, uh, I actually didn't speak about it. That's
Okay.
because I probably never felt that this is worth discussing. It's
Okay.
just that whenever I was feeling sad and all, when she
Uh-huh.
started questioning me that why are you like this, anything
Mm,
bothering you, when she started asking me about my health and all, I
mm.
probably confided or I probably confessed that I'm not feeling too good. That's because I've got this bout of depression.
And how did she respond?
So she's a very positive person. So she's exactly opposite to what I am. So I have
Mm,
always been a loner, and
mm,
along with that I have got this bouts of depression. So she keeps cheering me up. She
mm,
wants me to look at the positive side of things.
mm,
But one thing she's not able to appreciate fully is I love being depressed, right? That's because that's when I'm able to make discoveries. so
mm,
so she's reconciled to the fact that I'm going to be like this. But whenever it goes to a stage when
mm,
I start becoming really sad, right, or when I sulk into those solitude,
mm.
she starts she starts pulling me from there so that I don't cause self harm and all, I guess.
Interesting. And bipolar, you do know that bipolar disorder is genetic. Like,
I understand that. So I have discovered it. I didn't read
mm,
about it, but I got
mm,
to know. So my mom was probably also had a bit of.
mm,
I'm not sure whether she had BPMD or not, but
mm,
she was extremely sad at some point of time in her life.
mm.
That's when she had lost her parents
And
and
do
all.
you have children?
I have two kids.
Two kids, boy and a girl, or what's the gender?
So the older one is a girl, the younger
Okay.
one is a boy, and
Okay.
I'm able to see a bit of uh, bit of uh, uh, I don't know how to use this phrase, so pardon me
Right.
for not being able to phrase it properly. But I
Right.
can see something happening in my daughter's case as well.
Okay.
So while it's not mood swing and all, but
Hmm.
she becomes extremely irritable at times. She's
Hmm.
sometimes not able to sleep at night, and
Hmm.
her cognitive skills are absolutely top notch,
Hmm.
and she gets withdrawn, and when she starts reading something, she's
Hmm.
able to ask me those questions, one that you can't even dream of, so you
Wow.
won't have even thought of. So I
How
can
old is she
actually relate.
now?
She's 14.
Okay. Okay. Hmm.
So, and the other thing that you do is whenever you're depressed, right, you start
Hmm.
causing self-harm. Like for
Hmm.
example, I started plucking my hair, right?
Right.
So from initially started from the hair of my head, and then
Hmm.
it started impacting my eyebrows as well. That's because I
Okay.
don't know, it happens involuntarily, right?
Hmm.
So that's something that I've seen a bit of it in my daughter's case as well. Not fully, but yeah, I am able to see it.
So over the course of these experiences, has your wife ever at least encouraged taking your daughter to a doctor or anything like that?
So I try to. So the my philosophy is you need to experience everything, not to the extent that you start causing self-harm to yourself. That's because she's my daughter after all, right? So I
Hmm.
won't want that to happen. I
Hmm.
won't want her to get to a stage where she actually does more harm to
Hmm.
her than anything. So but at the same time, what I have done is I have started making her realize the positive side of things. That's because, while I enjoy depression, I actually start making discoveries. Not everyone is going to be like that. So I've
Right.
told her clearly, in case you feel really bad, you are feeling depressed and all, then
Hmm.
if you are able to channelize your energy, get it, continue to be in that mode. But in case you're harming yourself and you're losing interest in everything that you're doing, then
Hmm.
that's not a good state to be in. You
But
need to tell me
can a
that.
teenager process this kind of information?
I don't know. I'm not sure. But I have
Hmm.
spoken to her honestly, and
Hmm.
she's very mature for her age. So
Hmm.
she's a kind of person, and I have been studying her. I have been studying my son as well. My
Hmm.
daughter is absolutely mature for her age. Like, for
Hmm.
example, even at the age of 10, she
Hmm.
used to discuss about moksha and all, right? She
Wow.
realized that there's more, all, what are we doing here? So she started questioning me about life, just like the way I used to question. So, I don't know. I'm not sure how do
Right.
I do it. And moreover, so I have never discussed this with her, but she understands that I know what she's going through.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. Have you come
And
across
even
any
now,
other? Yeah,
Harsh,
go
you
on.
can make. Sorry, just one bit that I would want to add. So,
Yeah, please.
even now you are able to make out, right? There are so many things running in my mind. And
Hmm.
so these are, so, when I start writing and all, and
Hmm.
so I'm not able to write too well because, the words are faster than my speed of writing.
Correct. Correct.
So they cross my mind and I'm not able to put it in words. So sometimes there's so much more that I would want to write. There's so much
Correct.
more I would want to express, but I'm not able to.
Correct. And does this happen usually late at night or early in the morning sometimes? Does it have any kind of synchrony with time?
Now that I think of it, I think I'm mostly active during night. So basically
Hmm.
just before sleep.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I actually start drawing or something, and when
Hmm.
I get up. So as soon as I get up in the morning, probably within 5 to 10 minutes, something happens to me, and I start harnessing my creative skills.
Hmm. Interesting. Have you met any other bipolar survivors or in the community that you stay in or any friends, anything like that?
No, I'm not
Okay.
sure. I've never got to discuss it. I don't discuss this with anyone. So if
Correct.
people want to discuss it, I'm more than happy discussing it. It's just that not many people are comfortable doing it, and most of the
Correct.
people do not even understand the difference between sadness and depression, right?
Correct. What is the difference between sadness and depression?
It's the next step, I guess. Sadness
Hmm.
is something from which you can recover, but depression never actually goes away.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. Okay. So tell me a bit more about your creative activities that you mentioned in your write-up that you write nazms, poetry, you paint a bit also. So where did this come from, and when do you feel like doing it?
I have never assessed it, you know. So
Mm,
it comes to me. So, like for example, there are so many days when I have these episodes multiple times in a day. Like for
mm,
example, it can happen in the morning when I
mm,
feel like writing and I start writing. I get that episode in the afternoon as well, maybe
mm,
after lunch, and then during evenings when I'm supposed to go for a walk. And
mm.
sometimes it doesn't happen at all. So there are so many days when I don't feel like writing at all. So I just want to throw away everything and run away somewhere.
Have you ever considered making changes to your diet? Like, are you vegetarian, non-vegetarian, egg eating? Like, what is your diet like?
I'm
And
a pure vegetarian. I'm very careful about what I eat. I
right,
I hardly eat out, Harsh. So I'm
okay.
not a big fan of going out and eating, and I'm not a foodie either. So there are
Mm,
very few things that I like. Like for example, my favorite food is bread,
mm.
which my wife doesn't want to give me too often. That's because it has maida in it. The other thing that I like is roti dal. So,
Right.
so those are the only favorites. Otherwise, otherwise there are times when I feel like having sweet and all. So I treat
Right.
myself with those sweets. But these are the only
Right.
things. So it's not because of diet for sure. I, I'm
Do
I'm
you
very
consume
careful about.
eggs at all?
I'm sorry.
Do you consume eggs at all?
No, I don't.
You don't
Not in
consume
the
eggs.
form of pastries either. So,
Okay.
so we have put that sacred thread, right?
Mm,
So, being a Dambram, so we actually
right.
do Sandhyavanam and also we don't eat eggs. We don't
Right.
even eat in those places where non-veg is being prepared.
Okay. 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 So at least I can tell you in my case that I've done some experimentation with my diet. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There was a period in my life when I was running a lot and I was vegan and gluten free, right? And
Mm-hmm.
perhaps that created the bipolar experience in which I had a manic attack and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically realized that I was running low on vitamin B12. Okay,
Okay.
B12 is a nutrient which is only available in animal-based foods. Okay,
Correct.
so
Correct.
and the importance of B12 is immense because B12 basically fixes your nervous system and your brain.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
so what the fascinating thing, Prasanth, the fascinating thing is that we have a range of 200 to I think 600 or 700 in India for
Mm-hmm.
B12. Okay, whereas in
Mm-hmm.
Japan the range only starts from 400 and they go all
Okay.
the way to 1000. Okay,
Okay.
so I
Mm-hmm.
was at around 200, so I immediately amped up my B12 by taking supplements and eating meat and all that stuff, and I
Mm-hmm.
immediately felt better.
Okay.
So, and these days I eat like one snack or one meal of chicken every day or fish or something like that because I like to work out a bit also and swim a bit also all of that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So in my case at least I found that food can play a pivotal role in handling your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So in your case, I mean, you have obviously taken quite a regimented approach towards food. So I don't think you'll be able to experiment with this. But I just thought for the matter of discussion to put it out there that food is medication also when it comes to bipolar.
That's a fascinating point that you made, Harsh. So let me tell you something that happened to me. So
Hmm,
when I used to get these bouts of depression, right, I used to feel very weak at times, right? It
hmm,
weakens your body.
hmm,
It actually brings down your immunity levels, I guess, right?
hmm,
While I didn't catch cold, cough, and all, so
hmm,
those things were not happening, but I was increasingly feeling body pain, right? That physical
hmm,
pain used to happen, and
hmm,
that used to ease off my mental pain to a bit. And
hmm,
then I'm currently residing in Bangalore, right?
hmm,
So I came to Bangalore about 11 years back, and
hmm,
in Bangalore, people have this. So unfortunately, people do not get too much of sunlight, which is why
hmm,
there's always a deficiency of
hmm.
vitamin D. In fact, it
Correct,
must be happening in the other cities as well. That's because
correct,
people are mostly sticking indoors, right?
correct,
They hardly move out like the way we used to do it when we were kids. We used
correct,
to play in the sun all the time, right?
correct.
So the vitamin D could be a factor. That's because I have taken vitamin tablets because I used to feel pain. So I wasn't able to bend. I wasn't able to actually. So those bone related issues could be there, for
Hmm,
which I started taking D3, vitamin D3, 60,000 on my
Mm.
own. So, which is something
Right,
that you consume once in a week, right?
right.
The usual things that doctors
Mm.
prescribe. So I
Mm.
started taking that, but you know, it eased my things a bit, but I could never relate it to this. That's because I
Mm.
didn't know. I told you, right? So
Mm.
whatever I have learned it by studying, by
Yeah,
actually analyzing, and
because
also
Indians
by
are mostly
doing work.
deficient in B12, D, iron, calcium. All of these things, people, Indians have a low count, because they're not getting enough from food, and
Correct,
because we are eating too much junk, you know.
correct, correct. So I can sense what you're saying, and it does make sense. I'm able to join the dots now.
Yeah, yeah. Great. I think that's about all that I had from my end. Anything you want to add regarding your experiences? Well, I'm sure there will be hundreds and thousands of people who are going through a similar experience where they go through mood swings. They can't understand what's happening to them. They don't want to go to the doctor. What would you say to them?
So, so my only submission would be to start understanding the science. So I've always been an introspective guy. I've always been a person who actually gets to the core of things, right? I've never taken things at a superficial level. So which is why I probably could do a bit of reading. I could do
Mm,
analysis and I could make out that I have depression, right?
mm,
So my only submission would be to respect whatever you have. Even if you're depressed, start respecting you, right? And
mm,
start looking at the things that are there in your control. So instead of feeling bad or instead of sulking that I have
mm,
depression and I will never get cured or I will have to depend on medication all my life, what you
mm,
may want to do is start channelizing your energy. And that way you're
mm.
able to get more out of this life. You get to live only once, right? So
Correct.
in my case, I love getting into that mode. It may not be the case with many people, but at
Mm.
least start living with it. Start getting to a situation where you are able to actually come out of it.
I guess. Yeah. I
So
guess. I guess the key is to channelize the energies that you're feeling
that's
from
correct.
within you.
Yeah,
Right.
that's because so we are so talented, right? We haven't even scratched the surface of what we are capable of doing, right?
Correct.
So which is why I am always in that mode where I am actually trying to get to the next level. And this depression or this mania actually helps me go to that next level. It may
Mm,
not happen with many people, but
mm,
what they could typically do is if they are uncomfortable with this situation, they should
mm,
try to look for a cure for it. And,
mm,
and if they are happy being in this state, like the way I am, then
mm.
they probably need to channelize the energy to do something better or to make
Interesting.
most of their lives. That's my submission.
Interesting. Okay, we'll close it at that. I'll just pause it, the recording, and we'll talk offline. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.